Today I'm going to show you how to weather your Saber, how to make it look old, a little more worn, to varying degrees with a really simple weathering technique that anybody can do. I'm going to turn it into something that looks a little bit more like this, or even something that looks like this. It's a really simple technique. All you're going to need are the following things. Some basic all-purpose flat black spray paint. This is like a Tremclad or a metal spray paint. You can get from Home Depot or Rona, which is like a Canadian version of Home Depot. You need some paint thinner. You're going to need a couple of clean rags, some masking tape, as always eye protection, and I use these as a dust mask. It does nothing for the fumes. You're still going to need to work in a very well ventilated area, but it helps to keep the paint particulates and spray out of your breathing areas. I think that's all we need, so let's get started. Okay, using this basic Ascend, it's one of my basic Ascend sabers, I'm going to show you just a really simple and effective weathering technique. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out where and how much you want your saber weathered. Now, I haven't got all the parts. There's no pommel insert here, and there's no sleeve over this because I don't want to weather this saber too much. You can decide how heavily you want to weather it. If you want to weather it heavily, the first thing you would do would probably be to start to scuff it up with some fine grit sandpaper or even some steel wool in certain spots. So you want to pay attention to where, in the use of the saber, where would it get used and worn the most. And where it gets used and worn the most, you actually want it fairly polished, so raised edges. And where there's crevices, that's where you want your weathering to collect. So this would be fairly well used area, but not so much back here. So use a little bit of sandpaper just to kind of scuff it up. You want to give it some battle marks. You don't want to go all in the same direction, so you want to use both the circular motion and strokes. And just overall, just give it just a beaten up look. Again, on the emitter, the emitter's going to take a lot of hits, a lot of dings and bangs, and some of the crevices there. Now, I'm not doing too much of this, just a little bit. Next thing I'm going to want to do is figure out where I don't want my weathering to collect. In other words, the paint that I'm going to be using. I don't want it to go inside the saber body. So I want to protect the holes that go in the saber body, and for that I'm going to use a little bit of masking tape. So I'm going to mask up the spots that I don't want to get weathered, and then we'll continue. So I've got my masking tape attached. This is a very well machined area where the sleeve fits on precisely, so I don't want any paint to collect in this area that would affect the fit of the sleeve that's going to go on there in a little while. And I've got some masking tape protecting the pommel end. Now for the emitter end, all I'm going to do is take some old blade material, and I'm going to actually just insert it there and use that as a bit of a handle to grip while I'm painting, so that I don't get too much paint on my hands. I'm not going to use gloves for this, but I will use a dust mask just to keep some paint particles out of my breathing area. And I think we're ready to, oh, one more thing. Next step, almost forgot. You want to use this methyl hydrate. This is something you can get at just any old hardware store or paint store. It's kind of an alcohol-based, I believe it is. It's a cleaner, and it evaporates really quickly and doesn't leave any residue. So just a little bit on a rag, and this is a great place to use your handle. So you basically just clean off any of the metal parts and dust and things that you would have collected on your saber while you were sanding it. And this is what really prepares it for painting. You want the paint to adhere to the metal. We're going to be using I think as explained before, a metal paint, just a standard flat black paint, and we'll move to the next step. Okay, now we're ready to paint. I've got my just a basic flat black metal paint. Rona is a store that's a Canadian store, very much like a Home Depot or a Lowe's. So I've got my paint. I want to make sure that it's all shaken up. Got a dust mask. Now this does nothing for the fumes, so you still want to work in a well ventilated area with the windows open. Now this just keeps the particulates out of my breathing passages. I'm going to use paint thinner, which is different than your methyl hydrate. Paint thinner is going to work to take off the excess paint. I've got a couple of clean rags here ready to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some paint thinner to at least one of the rags. Probably may only need one. Not a whole lot. So I've got some paint thinner ready to go on a rag. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my saber I've got my area well protected with newspapers, flyers, and I've also got a little spray box here to control the spray. And I'm basically just going to apply spray paint fairly evenly, especially in the areas where I'm going to want there to be a lot of black that collects. So in little crevices, in the grips here, I want a lot in there. And it's pretty straightforward. Now what I'm going to want to do next, now I don't have it entirely covered, but that's fine, as I want to start wiping it off really quickly before it dries. The paint thinner on the rag helps to do that. You can wipe it off in a couple of different directions. And this is part of what's going to give it its weathered look. I want to wipe a lot off in the areas that I want to maintain a clean look. I'm going to find some paint thinner. And wipe less off in the areas that I want the paint to collect. And this process usually takes a while. Sometimes I'm going to need more paint thinner. This is really the tricky part. You may have to wipe off your paint and reapply it a couple of times to get this to look the way you want. But it really is just however you want this to look. Again, I don't want this to be a super weathered Saber. I don't want a lot of black on there. Some of it I'll be able to clean off fairly easily afterwards. Like here. Now that the paint's starting to dry, it's a little trickier to get it off. So you have to apply a little more pressure to the areas where you want to remove the paint. And if I do this well, it's going to look kind of like carbon scoring that just collects in kind of the grooves and crevices and areas in the Saber. Now that it's kind of dry, I'm going to grab it with my hand. Because this stuff dries fairly quickly, however, it doesn't fully dry for usually 2 to 3 days, which is kind of strange. But what I like to do is, once I get the Saber the way I want it to, I let the stuff dry. So I'm going to keep working at it with paint there a little bit to get the effect and the look that I want. As you can see now, my painting is complete. But as it's drying, it's fairly dry to the touch now. I'm going to leave it for a number of days just to allow the paint to really dry and secure. As the Saber is used and weathered and worn, it's actually going to wear off slightly little bits of paint, and just leave the paint in the areas that aren't so exposed. I'm going to pull out my blade because I don't want the paint to act as a glue. I'm also going to break free my pommel a little bit, because if there's any paint in the crack there, I don't want that to act as a glue and glue the pommel on. And basically that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this Saber for a while, just for the paint to harden. I'll put the other parts on just to give you an idea of what the finished product will look like. Now you can see with the collar on there, I'm going to leave the collar fairly unweathered because it's an exposed area. I might do a couple little touch-ups of some dark in there, but really I like how this has turned out. This is just a very mildly weathered Saber. Again, if I wanted to leave more of the paint on, or do several layers, I could also use a sponge or a cloth to kind of dab off sections of paint in areas where paint's collected. I did it all in one shot. I sprayed it in one shot and then began to take paint off. For a lighter effect, what you may want to do is sections. Just spray the emitter, then wipe some paint off, then spray the grip section and wipe some paint off. Sometimes it's a lot easier to control and get the effect that you're looking for. But that's pretty much what I was looking for. Hopefully that helps you in determining how to weather your Saber. Again, there are other techniques. This is just one real easy one. If you wanted to, if you have access to powder coating, you may want to powder coat, clear coat some of the surfaces. If you like the way the weathering is and you want to just kind of seal it and keep it locked that way, you can clear coat it with a powder coat, and that's going to make it really durable. Most of these metal all-purpose paints can handle a fair bit of heat, so you can powder coat it. Here's an example of some more heavy weathering that I've actually sealed with a matte clear powder coating. Again, same technique, just left more paint on. So hopefully that helps, and good luck with your weathering. Well, I hope that helps to show you how to weather your Saber and how much to weather your Saber. As with most weathering techniques, you just need to experiment. The nice thing about this one is it's simple. If you don't like it, you can wipe it all off with paint thinner and start over again. With some of the other ones that use like an olive oil baking or aluminum black, you may be stuck with the result that you have the first time. So you get a chance to play, experiment, see what it looks like until you're really happy with your result. So I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching.